Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. Lately, riots have been breaking out all over Iraq. Angry demonstrators clashed with security forces and demanded the resignation of the electricity minister. He did not disappoint them. Despite wild claims by Iraq's Ministry of Electricity, figures published by the US and UN bodies indicate that current level of electricity production is hovering around the same pre-war level. Iraqis are angry and baffled. Why are they roasting in Iraq's scorching heat? Why have successive governments failed to solve the electricity issue when Saddam succeeded in reviving electricity in a record time in 1991?
Frustration and outrage among thousands of people in the Iraqi oil-rich city of Basra. They've been living without stable electricity for more than 20 years. Angry protesters attacked local government buildings and clashed with riot police. And they had enough. Soon other demonstrations spread in different parts in southern Iraq. The protests cost the country's electricity minister his job. He resigned upon Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's request, according to some reports. But it's not an easy task. Electricity, or rather the lack of it, has been a chronic problem for Iraq. 7 years after the fall of Saddam Hussein and well over $15 billion spent, Iraqis are lucky if they get 2 hours of power before facing 4 with none. A nightmare in a country where summer temperatures can rise above 50 degrees Celsius. Dora power plant tries to operate at full capacity, but its machinery is 25 years old and can't keep with demand. And the people are angry.
Where's the electricity? It's switched off 24 hours a day. Sometimes it comes just for 5 minutes and goes off.
Iraq is in deplorable condition. Any country in the world is better than Iraq. Even Somalia, where the pirates are, is better.
After the electricity uprising, as many like to call it here, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki ordered to cut the emergency lines allocated for the Green Zone in Baghdad and the homes of the state's officials. But he also said that Iraq still needs 2 more years for contracts signed with Siemens and General Electric to build the country's power grid. That means Iraqis will have to suffer for another 2 years till they have a stable power supply. Omar al-Saleh for Inside Iraq.
To discuss Iraq's electricity woes, I'm joined from Baghdad by Ali Baban, the Minister of Planning and Development Cooperation, and from London by Sami Ramadani, a Professor of Applied Social Sciences at London Metropolitan University. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Ali Baban, I would like to start with you, and before I ask you my first question, there is one thing right from the outset I would like to make very clear, and that is regarding the recently resigned Minister of Electricity. Nobody has ever alleged, and no one can prove, that corruption, personal corruption, has indicted him or has tarnished his reputation. That's from the very beginning. We take it very seriously, any allegation about people's reputation. And even the number, the $17 billion everybody's throwing around that the minister got during those 4 years, that number is also false, according to him and according to figures published, that during those 4 years, his ministry received just a little bit over $6 billion. More than 2.5 have been spent correctly, and the rest are in letter of credit awaiting suppliers to fulfill their commitments. Having said that, Ali Baban, explain to me in a short manner why after 7 years Iraqis are still suffering from lack of electricity.
Really, I agree with you about your idea and what you mentioned about the minister himself. I think it is very necessary to confirm that the minister is efficient man and he is a professional man, and nobody accuse him about corruption. But really the problem is very complicated, and it is related to many factors: political factor, administrative factor, economics factor, the clashes and the antagonism between political groups impede our plan to improve the electricity in Iraq. I want to say that, and I want to say to the people that we should face this problem seriously, and it is not a challenge for 1 year or 2 years. I think we would take time to deal with destroyed a range or network, and we should spend a lot of money to solve this problem. Our range electricity program really was a subject for destruction because of the wars and siege and the blockage which Iraq were a subject for it in the last 20 years.
Sami Ramadani, listen to the minister. This is a warning. This is an omen. Those Iraqis who think they are going to get the electricity to pre-1990 or 91, they are mistaken. According to Ali Baban, it's going to take many, many, many years.
Yes, and Maliki confirmed that as well a few days ago when after the demonstrations. I think this is an endemic problem, and I myself doubt if the current setup can supply smoothly electricity to the bulk of the population for many, many years to come. And I think the problems that the minister alluded to are much deeper than even appearing on the surface. In fact, I think the electricity problem is a very good symbol of the entire political problems of Iraq and the way the successive governments since the occupation of Iraq have handled people's essential services. And electricity is one of them, perhaps one of the most important, because it affects people's health, daily lives, schools, education. Electricity, especially in the major cities, is one of the backbone infrastructure facilities that the population depend on. And the failure to supply electricity to the population is symptomatic of the setup that followed the occupation. And I think that one of the reasons, not every reason, we'll come to the other reasons, one of the reasons is that I think the Iraqi electricity industry, like much of the services in Iraq, are being primed for privatization. This is an agenda that the occupation had at the top of its priorities, to privatize as much as they could of Iraq's wealth, industries,
yes.
To open the doors for those who would reap the profits from the Iraq and its resources.
I was hoping to leave that issue to a later part of this discussion, and that is the two views about what to do with electricity and what to do with the Iraqi industry, whether to have a state monopoly or whether to go privatization. But since you brought it up, I think Ali Baban is one of those advocates who is looking for privatization, and his model is that in northern Iraq, in Kurdistan, there are some, I think, 2, maybe even 3 major electricity production plants. Right now, they are feeding the general Iraqi grid. So Ali Baban, you think the solution is in privatizing the Iraqi production of electricity?
Yes, 100%. First of all, I want to correct, I didn't say that the solution of this problem will take many, many years. Yes, maybe we would face this problem more than 2 years, but I think the situation would improve by time. Second, yes, I confirm the idea that privatization is the best solution for this problem, and we have a very good experience now in KRG. Some private investors succeed to offer about 20 hours a day for consumer, and I think this is a very success story of success.
I have to bring to your attention, Ali Baban, that some of the reports that we are getting from individuals and their friends and families in Erbil, in Sulaimania and Duhok, they disagree with you totally. Some of them are fulminating at KRG. Some of them are criticizing the government. They think they are getting 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. The question of 18 hours, this is, to be honest with you, this is the first time I hear it. But go ahead, I'm listening.
Really, this is what our reports say to us. We have some reports about that, and we have some witnesses, of course. Now the situation in Kurdistan, we cannot compare it with Iraq.
Would that be, Ali Baban, the same as in the green zone of Kurdistan? They get 18 hours and 20 hours, because in the green zone where the Iraqi government is, they get what? 18 hours, 20 hours, 24 hours? So it depends. Are we comparing apples with apples and oranges with oranges?
No, of course. Of course, it is not for a green zone of KRG. It is for whole people in the 3 provinces. Duhok, Suleymaniya, and Erbil.
Can I come in there?
Go ahead, Sami.
Yes, I think it is very important to stress here that ordinary people in Suleymaniya, Erbil, Kurdish cities, they complain very, very strongly, like the rest of the Iraqi people, about the services, including electricity. We have friends in Kurdistan who tell me very, very strong, with strong language, that there is equivalent corruption in Kurdistan, and that the ordinary people, the poor people of Kurdistan, which are the majority, do not get any attention in terms of the services, whether it's electricity or other services. So I think this is highly exaggerated to suggest that ordinary people in the Kurdish region are getting 18 hours of electricity. I will check on that tonight.
Really, we have some reports about that, yes. And some turbines face some problem in Erbil, and they solve the problem by time. We cannot compare the situation in KRG with the situation in the rest of Iraq. I think the privatization would be the best solution for our problem in electricity, but also this would take time. I want to refer to one point, the lack of coordination between the 2 ministries, the Ministry of Oil and the Ministry of Electricity. It impedes our program to improve the power of electricity, and really cause a lot of problem. The providing fuel for our power station was very slow, and we face a lot of a problem on that issue.
Since you are an advocate of privatization, Ali Baban, and that is the idea brought by the first civil administrator, the proconsul Paul Bremer, when he said Iraq's will only rise with Western-style economy and privatization, and he went ahead and pretty much he dissolved all the factories and all the industry. And look what happened right now. A lot of people, some of the figures that I have are shocking, and I don't even dare to tell you what unemployment in Iraq is right now. You know better than me. It is very, very, very high. That is one function, that is one result of the privatization brought by Paul Bremer, Sami Ramadani. How do you comment on this new wave of privatization when it comes to electricity?
Yes, I think I'm convinced that it's part of a systematic plan. Bremer put it on paper. It's not a secret. It's not a conspiracy theory. Their plan was to uproot the entire state sector, services sectors, the industrial sector, oil. I mean, I remember very clearly Mr. Baban threatened to resign if they passed the oil law, which was essentially to privatize the oil industry and give it to the multinationals. Why shouldn't that apply to electricity and other sectors? I'm really surprised that Mr. Baban is taking that view regarding electricity.
Let's listen to him.
Electricity should be an important commodity for the people. It should be controlled by the public with proper democratic controls. To give Iraq's wealth in this manner to private companies
is this a wholesale
really
of
harmful.
Country, Ali Baban?
Yes, I want to correct some things which you mentioned by you and by your colleagues. Really, my threatening to resign because of oil and law, not because of a privatization, or it is because of the problem with KRG at that time. And really, now the trend of a privatization, it is not in Iraq only. It is a regional trend. It is a global trend. Look to our neighbor now.
Look at our neighbor to the south, Saudi Arabia. Pretty much they nationalize Aramco. So look at the United Arab Emirates,
Yes.
look at Qatar, look at all them, look at Chavez, look at Latin America. How can you say that the oil industry is privatizing?
No, I don't say oil industry. I am talking now about electricity. The trend of privatization for electricity, it is global and it is regional. No one of
Maybe
our
it's in
neighbor
Europe,
now.
maybe it's in the United States, Ali Baban, but let's leave it because
also
can you imagine
in Middle East, my friend?
Can you imagine privatizing the electricity industry in Egypt or in Sudan or in Saudi Arabia and all these places? There will be riots. But let's move on. Sami Ramadani, you studied some of the charts published by Sigir, the Special Inspector of Reconstruction of Iraq, as well as by the Department of State, as well as some of the reports by the Iraqi ministry. So these reports, I looked at them also. They seem to me, and I'm not an expert, I'm the first one to admit, either they are doctored a little bit, or some of the terminologies they use, they are misleading. For instance, the question of production versus purchase. We now know that 2 feeders are coming from Iran, selling electricity to Iraq. The Turks are selling electricity to Iraq. Every now and again, the Syrians are selling, but those say they are given as if they are produced within the country, within Iraq.
Yes, in fact, these imports of electricity are above 15% of the total electricity supplies in Iraq. And they are adding these figures as though they are being produced by Iraq. So the figures are unfortunately doctored. And one can refer to some very enlightening documents. Like you, I'm not an expert, but I do read what the experts write. And there is one of the foremost experts on electricity in Iraq, Mr. Issam al-Khalisi, has produced some very important documents that the public need to be aware of, referring, for example, to the contracts with General Electric, GE, and with Siemens, a contract that was worth over $3 billion. And it turned out that that contract was only to supply equipment, not to install them, not to create the infrastructure for the installation.
Perhaps you should continue the picture by saying some of these equipment have been sent to Iraq and they are rotting in the desert for over a year now.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, this equipment might be completely redundant. And had they even been not redundant and brought into production, according to Issam al-Khalisi, it would have cost double the amount, over $6 billion, wasting public funds in an incredible way.
I cannot help Ali Baban but to ask the following question, because this question is glaring us in the eye. How come that Saddam, after 1991, after the ceasefire, was able to bring a great percentage of the Iraqi electricity to power and rehabilitate it and gave the Iraqis 8 hours, 10 hours, maybe even 12 hours. And now, 7 years after the invasion, more than, God knows, 10 billions, 12 billions, I don't want to specify the number, and 7 years, and with reliance on experts from the United States and other multinationals, and yet you live in Baghdad and you know what is the demise of Iraqi electricity.
Yes, I want to refer to a very important fact related to this issue. The consumption for electricity and energy also and fuel is increasing in Iraq. There is a big and a huge increase in consumption. And this is related to the improvement in the standard of living of Iraq. Nobody can deny that. We have some confirmed figure prove that. This a huge increase in consumption is responsible mainly for this crisis. Nobody can say that Iraqi individual now consume the same amount of energy and electricity like under Saddam regime.
Sami Ramadani, how about that? Most Iraqis now, they have air conditioning and they have fans and they have plasma screens and they have several refrigerators, and that is contributing to the lack of electricity. Do you buy that explanation?
Well, that applies to about less than 1% of the Iraqi population. I'm really surprised that Mr. Baban is talking about a rising standard of living in Iraq. This applies to only a very, very small minority of the population who have benefited from the occupation and the structures that have been created after the occupation. They live in luxury and they don't know what the rest of the population is suffering. Why would people be protesting? Why would people be so angry?
That's
with
a very
the
good
entire
point. Let us run this by Ali Baban. Ali Baban,
can I just mention one other thing before Mr. Baban comes in? That in terms of delivering services to the Iraqi people since the occupation, I'll give you one example of what has happened. The United States government gave the Iraqi government 6 finished construction projects in 2005, 2 years after the occupation. These 6 construction projects were perfectly done, and guess what they were? They were 6 new prisons. As if Saddam did not build enough prisons in Iraq. These were the only on-time successful projects that were delivered
from these projects,
and are functioning properly in Iraq.
Important question. Let us run it by Ali Baban. Why did people demonstrate? Why they were angry and carrying a coffin of the electricity, and then they were shot at in Basra and Sumawa, Amara, and even in Ramadi? Why were they demonstrating, Ali Baban?
They can't demonstrate now, but under Saddam regime they can't. This is first. Second, nobody blame those people about their demonstration. Nobody say that they have no right to do so. But of course, we refuse to destroy the public building and the public property, something like that. But I think the freedom in Iraq allow them to demonstrate freely without any problem.
Thank you, Ali Baban. Thank you, Ali Baban. Sami Ramadani, last question. We started by absolving the minister from any corruption, and yet no one can deny that there is a measure of corruption in the Ministry of Electricity, just like in the rest of the other ministries. How does that contribute to the lack of electricity?
Well, that's one of the basic reasons. I think the setups that were that followed the occupation have been corrupt setups, and corruption runs from top to the bottom. And I don't want to pinpoint individuals and so on, but every Iraqi knows today that to be appointed to become a policeman or a traffic warden, you need to pay corrupt officials to get anything done in Iraq. If you want documents ratified, if you want a passport, if you want anything done in Iraq today to get your birth certificate certified, you need to pay a corrupt official. Corruption has become so deep in this political setup, it's just embarrassing to talk about sometimes.
Sami Ramadani, Ali Baban, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
To watch the show online, please visit our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, this is Jassim Azzawi wishing you a great week.